The Sami, the indigenous people of northern Scandinavia, have lived for thousands of years in a vast region known as Sapmi, which stretches across parts of Norway, Sweden, Finland, and the Kola Peninsula of Russia. Traditionally nomadic, the Sami survived through reindeer herding, fishing, and hunting, with their own unique language, religion, and customs. For centuries, they lived in relative isolation from the rest of Europe. However, in the 16th century, as Sweden sought to consolidate power and assert dominance over its northern territories, the Sami became the target of state-sponsored persecution and forced Christianization. Before the arrival of Swedish missionaries and government officials, the Sami practiced a nature-based religion deeply intertwined with the land, spirits, and ancestors. They worshipped deities like Radi, the creator god, and Bewe, the goddess of fertility and spring, and used Noidi, shamans, to mediate between the human and spiritual realms. Central to Sami life was the belief that all elements of nature, animals, plants, and landscapes, were imbued with spirits. This worldview shaped their nomadic lifestyle as they moved across the tundra in harmony with the seasons and the migration of reindeer. Sapmi, where the Sami lived, was located far from the political centers of Scandinavia, and for centuries the Sami were able to live according to their own traditions, largely untouched by the outside world. However, as Sweden grew in power and sought to expand its influence into the far north, the Sami became viewed as backward and pagan by Swedish authorities. In the 16th century, Sweden was transforming into a powerful nation-state under the leadership of King Gustav Vasa and his successors. At the time, the Lutheran Reformation was sweeping through Sweden, and the monarchy saw Christianization as a tool to unify its population and assert control over its territories. The Sami, with their traditional animist religion, became a prime target for forced conversion. King Gustav Vasa, who ruled Sweden from 1523 to 1560, began a systematic effort to bring the Sami under Swedish control. His administration sought to tax the Sami, extract resources from their land, and integrate them into Swedish society. But beyond economic exploitation, the Swedish crown was determined to convert the Sami to Christianity. To this end, Swedish missionaries were sent to Sapmi to spread the teachings of the Lutheran Church. The process of Christianizing the Sami was often harsh. Missionaries condemned Sami spiritual practices as witchcraft and idolatry, and they destroyed sacred sites like siedis, sacrificial stones, where the Sami made offerings to their gods. The Noidi, the spiritual leaders of the Sami, were particularly targeted. Considered dangerous sorcerers by the Swedish authorities, many Noidi were arrested, tried, and executed for practicing magic. In 1609, King Charles V of Sweden issued an edict that called for the persecution of Sami who resisted Christianization. Those who refused to convert were fined, imprisoned, or exiled. In some cases, the Swedish authorities resorted to violent methods to break the resistance of the Sami. Churches were built in Sami territories, and Sami children were often forcibly taken from their families and sent to Swedish schools to be educated in Christianity, where they were forbidden from speaking their native language or practicing their traditional beliefs. The forced Christianization of the Sami went hand in hand with their cultural suppression. The Swedish crown viewed Sami customs and traditions as inferior, and over time the Sami were increasingly marginalized in Swedish society. Their language, religion, and way of life were systematically undermined as the Swedish state pushed them to adopt Swedish customs, speak the Swedish language, and practice Lutheran Christianity. One of the key ways the Swedish authorities exerted control over the Sami was through the taxation of their land and resources. The Sami were forced to pay taxes in reindeer, furs, and fish, further integrating them into the Swedish economy and weakening their traditional self-sufficiency. The imposition of taxes also meant that the Sami were no longer free to roam their ancestral lands as they pleased. Instead, they had to conform to the Swedish state's demands for economic output, which disrupted their nomadic lifestyle. In addition to economic exploitation, the Sami faced widespread discrimination from the Swedish population. They were often viewed as primitive and uncivilized by the Swedish settlers who moved into the north to exploit its resources. As the Swedish state encouraged settlement in Sami territories, the Sami found themselves increasingly marginalized, with their land and livelihood being encroached upon by settlers, miners, and loggers. The Sami's traditional religion, despite the state's efforts to suppress it, persisted for many years in secret. Many Sami continued to practice their spiritual customs alongside Christianity, engaging in dual religious practices. However, these practices were often driven underground, and those who were caught practicing the old religion could face severe punishment. The persecution of the Sami in Sweden during the 16th century set the stage for centuries of cultural suppression and discrimination. Over time, the Sami were pushed to the fringes of society, and their language, traditions, and religion were systematically eroded by the forces of assimilation. The forced Christianization of the Sami was part of a broader pattern of colonialism in which indigenous peoples were stripped of their cultural identity and coerced into adopting the beliefs and practices of the dominant society. While the Sami have endured centuries of oppression, they have managed to preserve many aspects of their culture. Today, there is a growing movement to reclaim Sami heritage and language, and the Sami people continue to fight for their rights and recognition as the indigenous people of Scandinavia. The legacy of Sami persecution in Sweden remains a painful chapter in the region's history, and it is a reminder of the destructive impact of forced cultural assimilation. The Sami's struggle for self-determination, both in the past and the present, reflects the resilience of indigenous peoples worldwide in the face of colonization and cultural suppression. In recent decades, there has been a growing recognition of the wrongs committed against the Sami people. Sweden, like other Nordic countries, has made efforts to address the historical injustices faced by the Sami. Today, the Sami have a recognized parliament in Sweden, and there are ongoing efforts to preserve and revitalize the Sami language and traditions.